So, guys, I've got to say, I think some of you longtime watchers and viewers know that, my secret, dirty secret is the fact that I love wood turning. I mean, even since I was a child, I've always enjoyed this type of thing. And so, whenever I get the chance to actually use a good lathe, I'm always excited. Now, I'll tell you, it wasn't too recently. We had some bowls and stuff to do, and I almost bought like a giant bowl turning lathe. I'm like, man, this like 3 grand. I really want it, but I didn't. But thankfully, a good friend of mine by the name of Albert actually had this mini lathe and has been very generous in allowing me to have it there at the shop. And for doing little things like this stopper, it has been absolutely invaluable, Alex. I really want a bowl turning lathe, but I'm just gonna make do with what we've got here. So if you guys aren't familiar, basically what's happening is I've gotten a piece of pecan here, and we're pretty good to go. I'm just locking it in, making sure she's running nice and true, and then setting everything up to get her turned. Now, interestingly, I don't have any like modern lathe tools. In fact, almost all the tools that I'm going to use for turning this top are actually some of the tools that I use for our primitive wood turning when we go on the road. So if you notice that these things are like literally has a tree branch for a handle, or is a little wonky looking, that's because they are. So we got this bad boy rocking and rolling, and yeah, there's a lathe tool with a tree branch handle. Um, I am, and again, I don't have a very wide selection of tools here. This is essentially a diamond point. It's got a 45-degree front on the front of it. And the first thing that I'm going to do is start separating out the little ball top of this piece. The real trick with this is not the decorative end, which is what I'm doing here. The real trick is going to be in getting the taper correct and to size. But we'll get to that in just a second. It's absolutely true that when you have all the right tools, the work goes faster, but there's so many things that you can use to get by with. For example, this particular piece, if you'll notice that handle, you can't see my right hand there because the handle is like super long. I originally made these to work with a spring pole lathe that I was tinkering with, and we had some larger pieces on there, and buddy, it kind of had some torque to it, and it would snatch a tool away from you. So just to be kind of safe with everything, I made the handles extra long, and I just haven't cut these guys down. So the other particular aggravation, if you'll notice, I'm actually not standing where I need to be when you're normally properly doing this lathe, because the camera person is absolutely in the way. But that's all right. That's just kind of part of it. What I'm doing here is I'm making that top little ball, and you'll see me stop the lathe a couple times and check it, because as it's spinning, everything looks round. But what I'm trying to eliminate is actually the flats on the side, and sometimes that's more difficult to see while it's spinning than you would imagine. So we'll turn this bad boy. We'll get in there, clean her up a little bit, and check her for flats. And finally, when I get down to where I need to be, then I'm going to move on to the actual stopper itself. All right, so here we are, and you can see I have pretty much delineated the actual cap, not just the ball, but the cap that's going to sit on top of the taper itself. Now this is a little tricky here, because what's going to happen is I have got to get this measurement correct, and that's where a pair of calipers comes in handy. I'm going to tell you something, whether you think you need them or not, a pair of micrometers is going to help you tremendously. I'm always surprised at how many times I use micrometers for getting good close measurements. So I'm roughing out what is going to be the upper portion of the taper. And now here's the real trick. I don't have what they call a skew chisel, which is just a chisel that's got a relative, just a slight angle on the end of it. It's really good for making flat surfaces and tapers, but you see I have got this pointed chisel, which means if I'm going to try to get a flat or a flat line, I have to turn my chisel 45 degrees to get something that's nice and flat. So this is going to be a little bit of a challenge. And of course, I want to taper down. So now what's going to happen is I'm going to grab my canteen, and I reached over and used a conveniently located weaving fid. That was just something I had to keep the mouth of the canteen round. And I am measuring exactly what that opening is against the fid. And I'm checking it against my piece. I want that top to be a slightly bigger, and I'm pretty close there. So that means what I'm going to do now is I'm going to try to get a nice shallow taper going toward the bottom. And again, notice the extreme angle that I actually have to put the chisel on to get this in there. Real easy to overdo this part. If you don't have enough angle, then it's kind of hard to get it to seal effectively. If you have too much angle, then that thing will pop right out of your canteen and it doesn't stay in very well. So you're looking for that almost that Morris taper happy medium of everything. And again, notice the extreme angle at what I'm having to put the lathe tool. So, and of course right there, that's because I'm trying to dodge a camera person. Oh, the sacrifices that we make for the craft. So I'll just take a couple of light cuts. We'll finish this guy up here, clean it up, get a nice solid straight finish as I possibly can. And then we're going to come in and add a little bit of decoration. Now this chisel that I have here is a super sharp and pointy one. It is a deep, deep V. I don't think I had ever seen one of these until a friend of mine had bought some carbide pieces. And the carbide lathe tools he had, one just was like a straight, super sharp diamond point. And I copied that into the steel. And I absolutely love this for doing super fine detail or getting in deep to do partings and whatnot. And I figured for this one, I wasn't going to go nuts with it. I was going to add a couple lines, make sure and bevel them real well, just to give it just a little bit of extra oomph. And now I'm always, my booty's always puckering just a tad bit when I'm using this tool because that tip is so fine and it is so grabby. So if you'll notice, I've got a super firm grip on this one, whereas the other ones I was a little more lackadaisical. But this one you really, really want to hang on to well. So what I'm doing right here is I'm chamfering some of the edges, and I'm going to come in and clean up this parting line. And once I get this done, I should be ready to grab a bit of sandpaper and just start cleaning her up. We'll start with some 120, and then we'll go down to a 220. So I've removed my tool rest, and I'm coming in with a little bit of 120 to clean up those hard edges. And yeah, this is pretty standard fare here. And I got to admit, this is one of my favorite parts of doing lathe work. It's that finishing cleanup work where you see all the tool marks disappear and you end up with just this brilliant finish. Yeah, it's good stuff. Now, for me, I'll start with the 120, and I'll clean up with the 220 there. Now, this is the part where I have to kind of rein myself in because I want to go finer. Like, I want to go down to 600 grit. I want that surface to be like glass. And it's not a good plan. The 220 does an absolute great job on that end of it. It gets it all nice and finished. And, a perfectly acceptable finish. You can't really see any scratches. It looks good, and it will take a high polish, especially on this pecan, because this stuff's pretty hard, and this wood is very well seasoned. So once we finish sanding this guy up, we're going to go to our handsaw, and we'll remove it and then do the finishing touches. Now I'm going to tell you, I am always tempted to throw this bad boy into the chop saw, but boy, it just never turns out well. When doing these type of handles, I always prefer to go to the vise and cut it by hand, just because because this is not a solid piece of wood. There's going to be a gap between the back of the fence on the chop saw, and that almost always causes a really bad problem. So a handsaw can solve you a lot of issues. We're going to clean it up here on the 36 grit just to give it a little bit of rounding. Just a little tippy tap there. And I'm not bringing out the full force of all my 2x72s. Usually we have 3 belts loaded up. But I'm going to use one of my little cheats. Unfortunately, I've got to change the belt on this guy. So this is a grizzly tool I bought some time ago, and I'm going to tell you, it has been super awesome. Now you see my drum is super worn, so it's actually kind of burning that top more than sanding it. Which is kind of a pain in my hind end, but I know that I can come back and clean it up. But this bad boy here, the flap, if those belts on there were new, it's so good because it contours. You can actually sand contours very, very easily. And even though I put some scorch marks on that top, I'll be able to take this out in a second. But man, you want to talk about being able to clean up things like an axe handle or something like that. This super specialty tool is really, really nice. Now, it's no fun changing the sandpaper on that flap side. Boy, that is a pain in the bahookus, let me assure you. But it does a great job. It saves a lot of time. And even if I've got a little scorch on there, a little bit of rubbing with some 220 will clean it right up and make it super, super beautiful. Yeah, look at that. Look at the figuring on that. Man, go pecan. And we're going to test her out, make sure she fits. Man, she's looking good. And folks, there is our stopper. Look at that. So guys, that is what we ended up with, and what a pretty piece. I'm going to tell you, I love working with the pecan because there's a lot of the cuts that have a lot of beautiful figure in them, and I'm super happy with this. Of course, we've hit this piece with our beeswax in rosin, and because we fit it to the piece here, the fit is just about flawless. In fact, I'd actually crammed this joker on down in there while it was still warm, and I'm going to tell you, the might of Samson would not have removed it. It actually seized up. I had to break out the heat gun to get it back out, but the fit is that tight and that good, and I don't think that I could be happier with that. And it looks really good as well. So, I mean, complete win on that end of it. There is our very fine wooden turned top.